Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Sarah Wong. Our top stories tonight. Hong Kong's COVID cases climbed to 4 digits, with a secondary school at the center of a possible cluster. A coroner's inquest ruled that a Filipino domestic worker who passed out at her employer's home had died of natural causes. And lawmakers overwhelmingly approved incoming leader John Lee's plan to overhaul the government structure. Hong Kong's COVID cases continue to climb, surpassing 4 digits for the first time since April. A cluster could be forming at a secondary school where dozens of students had a hot pot gathering last week. Isaac Lee reports.
For the first time in 2 months, Hong Kong's COVID caseload returned to 4-digit territory. There were 1,047 infections, 971 of which were local. 6 of them are members of the track and field team at Pui Ching Middle School. They had dinner with around 60 teammates and coaches at Gourmet Hot Pot in Ho Man Tin last Friday. One of the infected students was found to carry the Omicron variant BA.2.12.1. Those who had attended the gathering cannot return to campus until next week. New infections were also reported in 4 residential homes, including Shun Chun House operated by the Christian Family Service Center. 10 mentally handicapped residents at a home contracted COVID, and around 30 others have been sent to Asia World Expo for quarantine. On a separate note, the Center for Health Protection denied downplaying the COVID situation after it began releasing daily figures by splitting up local and imported cases.
The number of imported cases we encounter every day, it depends on the policies for inbound travelers and also the epidemic situations in overseas countries, which is or not too related to the local epidemic situations. We separate these 2 sets of figures so that the public can more understand how the cases are distributed among these 2 categories.
Al was also confident there will not be another multifold increase of cases, as Hong Kong experienced during the early stages of the 5th COVID wave. Isaac Lee, HKIBC.
In other news, the Legislative Council has approved a government restructuring plan that would add 2 more bureaucrats and 3 deputy secretaries, among other changes. The Chamber's sole non-establishment member was the only person who voted against the bill. Wong reports.
A government restructuring plan proposed by incoming Chief Executive John Lee. For some members of the Legislative Council, this revamp should have happened long ago.
I'm of the view that from time to time an organization should review its structure to catch up with times to see whether there needs to be a redivision of labors or strengthened to cope with the needs of changing times. The last time when there was a professional review of a government structure was done in the 1970s. From 1970s to now, it's been 50 years, and I think a government reorganization is long overdue.
However, Teck Chi-yun, who is the only non-establishment LegCo member, was one person who expressed hesitation. He raised questions on the proposed deputies to the Chief Secretary, Financial Secretary, and Justice Minister.
Third way has our reservations. We are yet to learn about the powers and responsibilities of these 3 DSODs and what is the division of work between the DSODs and DSODs. No details have been provided. With the new proposal, I see possible redundancies. We will reluctantly vote against the proposal, and at the voting stage, I will claim a division. Thank you.
Despite others raising points of worry as well, the bill was passed with an overwhelming 77 votes for it. Ambrose Lam from the legal sector made the only abstention. Wong, HKIBC.
The government says all 129 civil servants who did not sign a pledge of allegiance to the SAR have left their post. This was revealed in a written response to a question from lawmaker Jeffrey Lam. The Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs said all serving civil servants, around 180,000, have signed the declaration. Those who neglected or refused to sign the paper without any reasonable explanation had already left by the end of last year. Some were dismissed due to misconduct or have retired or resigned. The coroner's court has ruled that a Filipino domestic helper who passed out at her employer's home 5 years ago had died of natural causes. The verdict came after jurors were told that a 46-year-old was allegedly overworked and abused. Joanna Ho reports.
Leonita Arcilas Quinto was 46 years old when she was found unconscious at her employer's home in Mayfu Sanchun on April 4, 2017. She was pronounced dead the same day at Princess Margaret Hospital. After a week-long inquiry, a 4-member jury at the coroner's court decided that the Filipino woman had died of natural causes. That was contrary to her younger sister's belief that Quinto was overworked during her 4-month stint. Her sister earlier told the court that Quinto was forced to start working as early as 3 a.m. and would only finish at around midnight. Her employer, who left Hong Kong earlier this year, would not allow her to use the toilet to change sanitary pads during menstruation. Forensic pathologist Ng Chung Ki, who performed an autopsy, said it was hard to judge whether Quinto had suffered defecation. He said no irregularities were found in the organs. Meanwhile, Coroner Stanley Ho has asked for a police investigation on the employment agency, which allegedly did not keep a copy of Quinto's medical report. The Asian Migrant Coordinating Body believed Quinto was not the only domestic worker to be exploited, and the situation worsened since the pandemic.
In our own survey, about 85% complained of having longer working hours as compared to the time when there was no pandemic. I think if they will conduct a thorough study, they will find out that many workers have died because of sickness related to stress, because they are overworked.
He called on the government to regulate the working hours of domestic workers so they would be guaranteed 11 hours of uninterrupted rest every day. Joanna Ho, HKIBC.
The Consumer Council is urging shoppers to study food labels carefully before purchasing sandwich breads. That's after an investigation found that the nutritional values fluctuate between different brands of the staple. Isaac Lee is more.
A homemade sandwich seems to be a perfect choice of breakfast for the health conscious. But are they really healthy? To find out, the Consumer Council tested 14 packs of prepackaged white bread and the same amount of wheat bread. The watchdog discovered that sodium content on average was up around 3% compared to a similar test in 2018. While none of the samples exceeded the high sodium threshold of 600 milligrams per 100 grams, a few came close to breaking that mark. This T65 loaf from Simply Life contained 567 milligrams of sodium per 100 grams. But interestingly, it is also the least fatty. On the other hand, this premium soft toast bread sold at Japanese supermarkets chain Don Don Donki contained 12 grams of fat per 100 grams, 10 times that of Simply Life's. Part of the reason may be its high sugar content. The preservative propionic acid was also found in 6 wheat bread samples, but the consumer watchdog dismissed food safety concerns.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration opines that propionic acid is a food additive that is generally recognized as safe, and the maximum permitted level was not stipulated. Consumers who wish to choose products without added preservatives should read the ingredient list before purchasing or even prepare homemade bread.
4 packs of bread were not attached with food nutrition labels. But even when consumers pay attention to the labels, they may not be making informed choices. 10 labels displayed inaccurate values, including one which reported 90% less saturated fat than the actual amount. The Council has also referred suspected violations to relevant authorities. Asakli, HKIBC.
The watchdog also gave tips on how to choose from a variety of bedding products claiming to resist mites and bacteria.
Anti-mite or antibacterial effect, it may be harder for consumers to understand whether it is genuine or not.
I think very important is that even after the consumer buy the bed sheet, they still need to regularly wash the product and also dry it according to the instructions on the care product. Keep a very good hygiene, I think, is very important than just relying on the antibacterial claim.
The Council tested 15 models of bed sheets and mattress protectors with antibacterial or anti-mite features. Close to 80% of antibacterial products were unable to effectively inhibit bacterial growth. The thread count and materials of some products were also inconsistent with the packaging labels. Overseas, a controversial flight which would have deported asylum seekers from Britain to Rwanda was scrapped in the 11th hour after the European Court of Human Rights intervened. But London refused to give up, and a second flight is already being arranged. A dramatic U-turn forced this plane bound for Rwanda to remain grounded in Britain, prolonging the legal tussle between immigration rights groups and the British government. Up to 7 asylum seekers on the charter flight were asked to get off after Downing Street hit the brakes on the controversial migrant scheme. The European Court of Human Rights intervened just before the aircraft was due to take off, halting the deportation of an Iraqi man on the grounds that he faced a real risk of irreversible harm. Under the plan announced in April, Britain would send thousands of refugees arriving at its shores through the English Channel to Rwanda at a price of around $150 million. Rwanda, whose own human rights record has been under the microscope, denied accusations of placing monetary incentives above human dignity.
We don't think it's immoral to offer a home to people, something that we have done here for more than 30 years. And we're doing this for the right reasons.
We have playgrounds, we have indoors games, but we identify more once the migrants and the refugees are there.
The scheme's architect, British Home Secretary Priti Patel, says she was disappointed but pledged to press ahead with another flight. Prime Minister Boris Johnson hinted that London could leave the European Convention on Human Rights as a result of the setback. But the legality of the Rwandan policy will first need to be tested by Britain's own justice system in a full judicial review next month. China's economy improved marginally in May after the country's industrial production surprisingly picked up, while retail sales recorded smaller losses. Chloe Feng reports.
China's economic slowdown moderated last month after COVID lockdowns were eased in several cities, including the business hub of Shanghai. Industrial production, a gauge of activity in manufacturing, mining and utilities sectors, unexpectedly went up by 0.7% in May year-on-year, beating analysts' forecast of negative growth. Retail sales declined for the third straight month, but the 6.7% drop in May was a notable improvement from April. Fixed asset investment or expenditure on property, infrastructure, machinery and equipment grew by 6.2% year-on-year, a slight drop from April. The National Bureau of Statistics noted signs of recovery, but warned of challenges ahead.
We must be aware that the international situation is to be even more complicated and grim, and the domestic economy is still facing difficulties and challenges.
The country's unemployment rate remains a major concern. The urban jobless rate, which excluded tens of millions of migrant workers, went down by 1/5 of a percentage point to 5.9%. But nearly 1 in 5 youths are now unemployed. Amid the difficult job market, more top school graduates are giving up their dream of working in Beijing or Shanghai and opt for stable employment in smaller cities. Chloe Fong, HKIBC.
The local stock market ended higher today after a painful sell-off earlier in the week. All eyes are on the upcoming U.S. Federal Reserve meeting, which is expected to announce further interest rate hikes. Despite the uncertainty, the city's benchmark still gained over 1%. Video sharing platform Bilibili picked up over 8%, and Alibaba gained 4%. A-shares also contributed to the rally, with Ping An Insurance ending the day up 8%. Automobile manufacturer NIO even jumped 12% ahead of its new vehicle launch. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index closed up 240 points. Top 10 active stocks: Tencent up $3.80, Alibaba up $4.40, and Tracafun up 28 cents. BYD Company down $8, Ping An up $3.75, and Kuaishou Technology up $1.75. Forex trading against Hong Kong dollar. Euro is trading at 8.18, British pound at 9.48, and Australian dollar 5.43. Over to the UK market, FTSE 100 is up 80 points. Onto the weather now. Cloudy with showers and squally thunderstorms tomorrow. Temperatures range between 26 and 30 degrees. Sunny intervals return on Friday, but brace for another wet weekend. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for this Wednesday night. Join us for more updates at 11. I'm Sarah Wong. Thanks for watching. Take care and stay safe.